Alright, this one is about the armor pieces. I'm not gonna go through the entire Destiny board like I did with the weapons. Um, Mostly... Nope, there's no reason. I think just because it's easier to talk about it as a group together by role. So I'll just start talking. Alright, first we have Grove Keeper. So there's essentially... Let me just pull up both the tanks. How about that? Okay, so we essentially have two things going on. We have Night Helm, Hunter Shoes, and then any of the like defensive plate chest pieces. So for Grove Keeper, we often put them on Guardian armor because Grove Keeper is the most likely tank to be inside the enemy when they're engaging. Particularly if, um, I don't think we've talked about it yet, but Grove Keepers can often be used as sort of a counter engage of like trying to stop the enemy's engage. And so jumping into the middle of them while they're throwing their damage out, stunning them, and then guardian armoring is a pretty effective combo. The other tanks could make use of guardian armor, but they tend to be like Camlin and Soul Scythe are more likely to be at range, and so you can get more effectiveness out of Demon Armor, Judy, Armor of Valor. We'll talk about the boots. Hunter Shoes. So Hunter Shoes is it's like a 120% sprint that increases your CC duration. I have the game open. I could just pull up the tooltip. Leather, boots, Hunter Shoes, Rush. Increase the duration of crowd control effects by 35%. So it's a pretty short sprint. It only lasts for 3 seconds, but it is 120%, so you get pretty far. And you'll see it has that 30-second cooldown that most of I think all of our ZvZ boots are going to have. Okay, and then for the helmet. You are going to see me pretty much all these builds are going to have Night Helm here. If you aren't bringing a Night Helm to a ZvZ, you should seriously consider the fact of whether or not you're an asshole in real life, because Night Helm is an integral part of being a Zerg. Soul Scythe is an extremely powerful tank weapon, but it's nullified by Night Helm. And so if you don't have Night Helms, you're going to get extremely cockblocked by Soul Scythes, Wind Walls, Firewalls. I'm sure there's a couple other things. And so Camlins. So Night Helms are they're one of our main enablers for our engage, and you want as many people having them as possible. Now, I said you should consider whether or not you're an asshole, because some builds do require an assassin hood, and there's a couple other helmets that have some decent utility. But when in doubt, just throw on a Night Helm. Okay. So for some of those other options, for Grove Keepers, since you're going to be deep in the enemy, possibly during their engage, you can get a pretty good effect out of Judicator Helmet. It's a wide area, like 1 second stun. The stun's kind of short, but that can be enough especially if you catch people while they're casting. Because if you interrupt their casting of like their E, it'll go on the full cooldown. Um, Another one that they might have nerfed it. It might be dead now, but Guardian Helmet was in the meta for a little bit. Um, Maybe that was an NDA thing I might have seen. Yeah, I think it's like not really in the meta anymore, but it had its moment. Maybe it'll come back, but it puts like a shield on you and your nearby allies, and at least on rework, it was a pretty strong shield. I'll talk to the other armors quick. Demon armor is you channel an aura that it's an uninterruptible channel, so you become CC immune. Well, you can be rooted and slowed, but you can't be stunned. And while you're channeling, your own defenses are reduced, but your allies' defenses are increased, and you and all your allies will reflect. Who cares? You will reflect some percentage of damage back at people. This is really strong against things like Mist Piercer and Galantine Pair, and it should work against Bridal Fury, but it doesn't. Like Halberds, a lot of the melee builds. I think all the melee builds except for Bridal are usually reflectable. But you do have to kind of be a little careful about the self pierce and making yourself weaker. Usually you combo that with a Gigantify potion. But you can also use it for little things like if you are like next to a Camla and you're about to get sucked in, you can pop your demon armor so that you're CC immune and don't get pulled in. Judicator armor, this one up top. This is you put like a defensive bubble on the ground, and that'll increase your allies' resistances as well as increase healing received. So also super strong. And a lot of the things that I talk about that like increase resistances, they don't stack with each other, but they'll stack with like other effects. So if you demon armor within Adjudicator armor, then everyone gets like a ton of resistances. Armor of Valor is you channel, and then anyone who hits you gets like a little bolt shot back at them that will silence them. You don't like see or really need a ton of these in your Zerg, but especially if things like in smaller scale fights, they're better. Like in the 20v20s, the Valor is pretty good. You can really screw over like ice players or frost players and fire players. And the bigger ones is kind of more difficult to get use out of it. You can screw over like siege bows, but siege bows aren't particularly like strong at the moment. Yeah, I think that's about it for tanks. So yeah, most of the plate chest pieces are solid options. Hunter suit is a solid option. Yeah, I think the only other thing you would take would be like Scholar Sandals, and we'll talk about Scholar Sandals more later. Oh, I should have led this video with the fact that your guild, if you're joining a ZvZ guild, they will probably have like some sort of image or spreadsheet or something that tells you their approved builds. You'll probably see the same thing that I talk about, but make sure that you check with them because that's usually what they're going to regear, and you want to get regeared. Okay, let's close that. And let's talk about the healers next. Alright. healer is a very typical cloth build. You'll see night helms or mercenary hoods. Mercenary hood is like a complement to night helm of it's a cleanse targeted on you. Scholar sandals is a let me pull it up. Scholar sandals is you channel, increasing your movement speed by 70% for 4.5 seconds, grants immunity to stuns, roots, and slows, and also gives you a bunch of energy back. This, in terms of, energy, I'm going to call it mana all the time, gives you energy back. If you ever find yourself running out of mana, just as any weapon, any whatever, Scholar Sandals with Focus Run will probably be enough to solve any potential mana problems you have. If you're still having mana problems, then you're probably just not pressing your boots often enough. Also, 30 seconds. 30 second sprint. Yeah, so this thing is pretty big in my opinion. Right up there next to Night Helm. So this thing makes you immune to stuns, roots, and slows. Keep in mind that this is after you start casting it, for some reason. So if you're already slowed, you will stay slow. But you can use this and then run into a slow and be immune. But yeah, so when you're using this, if you combo this with your Night Helm, you are basically CC immune for like 4 to 5 seconds, which is usually enough to get like wherever you're going. A lot of people don't like Scholar Sandals because it is a channel, and so if you don't use the full channel, you have to manually cancel the cast, which can be a little tedious, especially because the game can get a little laggy in the bigger fights, and so it can be sort of difficult to actually just cancel your boots. But my opinion, it is well worth that little cost of just actually being able to properly engage. One other thing that's a little weird, in my opinion, is that snare charge will interrupt your cast, and so you won't get rooted when they snare charge you, but you will stop sprinting, which is jank, especially because snare charge doesn't say anything about that. But yeah, it's better than getting rooted, I guess. Okay, back to build. Okay, then we should talk about Cleric Robe. Hopefully it's self-evident that having a self-cleanse is useful. This will also cleanse people around you. Not quite as good as having like a targeted cleanse on your weapon, but it's not bad. Okay, so Cleric Robe. So obviously it's cloth. Cloth robes are going to give us the biggest percentage to our physical attack and healing done. Because you're a healer, you can pretty safely stand towards the back line, or at least like on the edges. You don't really have to get into the thick of things. And so you don't have to really worry about your health pool that often. But you do need to worry about the occasions where you get pulled into an engage. So you get flanked, you were stood out of position, you screwed up somehow, you tried to save someone, went too deep, and then you get pulled in by a Camlin. Pretty much the only thing that's going to save you is A, your allies, or B, your Cleric Robe. So this puts a ward on you that lasts 1.5 seconds, and then the next time you take damage, you become immune to damage for 3 seconds, and your damage and healing will be increased by 30%. We're not really caring about the damage and healing. We're mostly caring about the 3 seconds of damage immunity. So generally in Albion, you will not get straight one-shot. You will die to multiple things that hit at the same time, or um, like things that hit like kind of back to back, right? Because the enemy is going to count down 3, 2, 1, engage, and then they're going to all hit as close to the same time as they can, right? And so 3 seconds sometimes is enough to save you. And the fact that it's sometimes enough to save you is worth taking. It's also it's one of the 45%, so the cloth robes are either 40, 45, or 50%. If we look through the other robes quick, Mage robe increases your resistances, but that's not gonna save you. And purging a couple of the enemies that hit you isn't really gonna. That's not. It's just not gonna be enough. I'm saving Purity Robe for a little bit. Fear Aura definitely isn't gonna save you. You could like push around some melees. It's my Discord, not yours. Sorry. Why don't I just? Oh no, CTA soon. You could like push around some melees, but you know, the main way that you're gonna die is to being pulled into a clump. So that's not. It's gonna do you any good. Druid robe. This sometimes comes out in the like spammer builds. Um, just because like it gives you fatter healing rather than quicker healing. I don't know. If it works, it works. It's got a long cooldown for what it is. Giving up cleric robe is always just sketchy, in my opinion. But I guess if you were gonna wear scholar robe otherwise, then whatever druid robe can give you some more healing. This gives you the mana reduction though too, so it's fine. It's fine, but eh. Cultist robe. This requires you to channel, and yep, you have to stop and channel, and that's not gonna save you when you need it. Royal robe. This basically paints a giant target on the ground, so if any of your allies actually try and stand in it, you're just asking to get killed. Scholar robe is one of the main alternative cloth robes that we're going to see, and that's basically for people that require the cast time increase. We'll talk about that a little later, I guess. Holy healers don't really need that. Nature healers definitely don't need that. So cleric robe it is. Okay, robe of purity. Robe of purity is pretty good. It gives you immunity to knockback effects, and it also like knock back people around you. So like you can't really get snare charged because the Camlin will get knocked away whenever they try and snare charge you. I think they could snare charge next to you, and you can still get stunned. But it is a decent option. They are currently like ridiculously expensive. Like, this is 400k for a flat 4 robe of purity. That's unnecessarily costly. And I don't know if it's as good as 3 seconds of immunity. Okay, that's my blurb about cloth robes. Alright, healer build. I'll Alright, we'll talk about our DPS next. Mostly the same idea. Night super solid. Scholar Sandals, super solid. Cleric Robe, super good. If you are playing a weapon that has a very long cast time E, then you kind of like need Scholar Robe. So, for example, Damnation. This thing is a 2.5 second cast time. Um, that doesn't sound that bad, I guess, if you're like a World of Warcraft player. But this is Albion, and okay, I mean the damnation's gonna hit people anyways. But 2.5 seconds is like enough time to walk out and like sprint out of the area. What's another long one? Brimstone. Brimstone uses cast time 2 seconds, and then this also has a 1 second delay, so it's like doubling down on delay. Um, but yeah, with that kind of cast time, you're like relying on luck to hit people really. And you're also threatening your own life because the longer that you are like forward as part of your engage, the more likely it is that you're gonna be there for when their counter hits. Okay, so yeah, it's basically damnation, brimstone, uh, frost, like permafrost, and mist piercer. I think those are the main builds that use it. If I missed one, then oh well. ZvZ builds, that is. I don't particularly care about the other builds. Oh, and there are some weapons that have like a really long uh, E cooldown, and so they require uh, an assassin hood. I think the main example of that would be Energy Shaper. Yeah, so Energy Shaper's got that 39-second cooldown. If you're gonna hit every engage, then you sort of need a uh, assassin hood. Um, yeah, because it's not just that you're gonna miss. Like you're gonna. How do I say this? So you're gonna be with the team on the first engage, and then you're gonna miss the second engage, but you're only gonna miss it by like 9 seconds, and so you're gonna spend 20 seconds with your E up until the next engage. Um, and that's going to be really tempting to go throw your E off by yourself, but generally if you're throwing your E by yourself, you aren't really achieving anything because one player doesn't really have enough damage to kill people. Yeah, that's our DPS. Alright, here we have our two melee builds. You're really relying on two different things. So, on the left one, you are relying on soldier armor to get you enough stacks for you to do clothy levels of damage. Because that stacks up to what, like 100% or something like that? Soldier armor. Increasing all damage you deal by 7% stacks up to 10 times. So 70% damage increase. That's more than the plus the 10% you already have, 80%. That'll be more than like what the clothies have. So you can get some pretty solid damage off by um, by using a soldier armor as a melee. And this also makes you, decently tanky. You are wearing plate. It's not quite like a guardian armor or anything like that, but you do have plate stats, so you'll be able to survive decently well. You're not going to survive like a straight up full Zerg engage, but you have a decent shot. Our second build is mostly about relying on Hellion Jacket in order to sustain through enemy like chip damage, and that way you can stay inside the enemy Zerg for longer periods of time. um, these two builds are basically cover all of the different melee weapons. We'll talk about the clap build in a second. Some melee options will also go for that. As for helmets, Night Helm, always a solid choice. Melee builds are particularly mana hungry, so you definitely want to make sure that you have at least a Scholar Cowl or Scholar Sandals. Over on the right side, um, I have Assassin Shoes shown. That is that can be any leather boot for the refreshing sprint. And that can get you a little bit more cooldown reduction. With the with the Hellion jacket on the right side, you can use Spectre Hood to this will reset the cooldown of your chest piece ability, so you can get an elongated stay in the enemy Zerg. Other options are Stalker Hood. So this is if people are below like half health, you'll uh, you'll do an AoE like pierce on people. It also boosts up your own damage. And then Scholar Cowl is it's a solid defensive option. It gives you quite a bit of resistances as well as returning mana on hit. If you're ever wearing a one-handed melee weapon, Facebreaker is probably your go-to choice. This will give you defenses and increase your damage done by a couple percent. But offhands are pretty loose. You can use like whatever is decent. You'll see mist collars every now and then. Probably not a crypt candle unless you're trying to die or you're memeing. I don't think you see it anymore. You used to see taproots. Yeah, I think that's our main. So like Facebreaker, taproot, mist collar, but probably Facebreaker. Yeah, and then I also listed Royal Sandals here. We'll talk about these in the Cloud build. And this is also roughly what the Spectre Jacket build would look like. Some people would argue for the Guardian boots for the Gigantify, so you can like Gigantify with your Spectre Jacket. Does make you kind of slow, but if you're on like a Bloodletter, you can kind of make up for that. There is also the Lifesteal food, which I believe still works with Spectre Jacket. So you self burn yourself, but the burning also heals you, so it like kind of makes up for it. But they're also potentially gutting Spectre Jacket, so maybe by the time you watch this, it will no longer be relevant. Okay, yeah, I think that's it for melee. Okay, for our clap build, we're essentially cloth chest, either cleric or scholar robe if you need it, with royal hood, royal sandals. So, royal sandals, on top of being a very good sprint, they are 75% for 7 seconds and increases your damage by 20%. So, very strong for boots. It does decrease your defenses by 13% though, so you do have to watch out. You're going to, this is a full like glass cannon build. Other major component is the royal hood. So this will, it'll stack up over time, and then once you like, if it stacks up and then it'll like disappear after a second, or if you hit someone, it'll pause your stacks and give you that amount of damage for 6 seconds, something like that. And this is 5% damage 6 times, so 30% damage. Yep. I think it used to be a lot more, but this has also been part of their nerfing all damage. Let me mix it up for the CTA quick. And then proceed to, cover my screen. Another way we can possibly get more damage is using our swapping out our cloak for a keeper cape. This is where if you fall beneath a certain health threshold, like 70% or something, it'll proc and give you. Let's just pull it up instead of giving you vague numbers because I don't actually know. Keeper cape. Nice. Activates when your health drops below wrong tag. Pretty sure it's 70%. Enter a rage, increasing your damage by 50% for 6 seconds. It doesn't say the cooldown, but it is kind of a long cooldown. It's kind of hard to rely on, but if the stars align, you can get pretty solid effect out of it. So this build is, you really reserve this for your like really good players, who you want to like, you're trying to like maximize their DPS. You don't really need this in your Zerg, because there's no Night Helm, there's no Scholar Sandals. You don't have a defensive cape if you're using Keeper Cape. But it does enable individuals to do some pretty solid damage. What I was saying earlier about you can't really one-shot people by yourself anymore, that still applies like in this build. You can do some nutty damage. I don't think you can quite one-shot anyone though, even with this. But you don't want like too many. Okay, well, if you could, you would want everyone in your Zerg wearing this, but you need Night Helms. So they're also, these pieces tend to be expensive because they're reliant on royal sigils. So most people don't regear these out of like an economical reason. But yeah, so just keep in mind, if you're trying to like do maximum damage, you want these 3 pieces. Pretty much any weapon. Galantine Pair, Bridled Fury, Brimstone, Wailing Bow, Mistpiercer, Weeping Repeater, whatever. Really, it's like any weapon in the game. You're trying to clap someone, you Royal Hood, Cleric Robe, Cleric Sandal, Royal Sandals. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's all there is that needs to be said. Okay, pull up supports. So this will be our Locus, our Icicles, any other random support build you have. We are using Assassin Hood because Locus has a above 30-second cooldown. Boop, 44 seconds. I think maybe T8 has sub 30. No, even T8 has 35. Maybe 8.3. I think you can get like a 30-second cooldown. So maybe then you could run Night Helm. But it is, arguably having, a sub 30-second cooldown Locust isn't the end of the world, because you can do quite a bit with Locust. For our chest armors, really all of the utility plate armors are good options. Demon armor and Guardian, Demon armor and Judicator armor are going to be your standard options, just because you want a lot of those in your Zerg. Knight armor, you usually see the pores in this. it tends to be really cheap, and it's it's not it's not that great. You can kind of help like mitigate some melees with it. If you're fighting in chokes, you can wind wall and then locus on top of it, and you can solo stop engages. I think I have a video. I don't know if I put it on my YouTube. Maybe I should. Of me doing that in like the old faction war system when everyone was doing dungeon fights. I had just a couple clips of like they would engage. I'd see like you'd see their night helmets pop, and then you throw your wind wall, locust on top of it, and you just stop everyone that tries to go through the tunnel. It's pretty great. So in that scenario, it can be. If you're on like a territory, that could be a good option. Shit, maybe we should actually start doing that more often. But yeah, any of the other plates would go well. Guardian armor is also not like common at all. If you wear it, people will probably tell you're memeing. But in like melee heavy metas and you're doing a lot of open world, then Guardian armor can be pretty decent. Or if you tend to be a very forward Locus, like you're trying to like purge enemy engages, and so you're dropping your Locus as they're all like running past you, and then you can Guardian armor on your way back to your team. So there are playstyles where Guardian armor can be useful, but generally not a great option because you're most likely going to be kind of playing where your healers are playing, kind of out of the way. All right. And Scholar Sandals, solid mana option, solid boots for running through chokes and shit. Some people will run leather sandals for the increased cooldown reduction. Probably have to edit that out. Yeah, leather shoes for more cooldown reduction. Personally, if you ever get into a fight that lasts longer than a couple engages, you are going to regret not having mana as a Locus, in my opinion. And so I just stick to Scholar Sandals. I'm max spec arcane. I can afford to, not have I don't like need the extra cooldown reduction. So I go, whatever. Words are hard. Last thing that I want to talk about, just as kind of an off case, every once in a while, is that even the right way to say that? There's a couple builds where they are hard focused on spamming spells. So that would namely be Permafrost and the Holy Flash Q builds for that Holy Healer. Some Holy Healers use, typically on Hollowfall. So this is kind of more of like a 5v5, 20v20 sort of build. It's kind of iffy in ZvZ, in my opinion, but it does function. Particularly because Scholar Sandal, Permafrost and Hollowfall have mobility on their W and E abilities. So yeah, Morgana Cape is whenever you activate your E, you get a massive cast speed increase. Royal Hood makes it so that your spells don't cost mana for like 10 seconds. So generally, like you use your E, proc your Morgana Cape. Well, okay, you probably use the Royal Hood first. Royal Cowl, sorry. Pop your E, and then spam as many spells as you can with the Morgana Cape proc. And then afterwards, you can use your Scholar Robe, which increases your cast speed as well, on top of reducing your energy costs. And then you can kind of rotate between like the things to keep your mana costs down while you spam abilities. Frost players generally default to using a blink because between the two blinks they can get pretty solid mobility. This also allows you, like the cleric sandals give you like an iframe, so that can be kind of handy. Not having a sprint can maybe be a little dicey sometimes, but I think with the the 2 blinks, you can make it work. Okay, I think that's all I have to say about gear. I have a CTA to go to, so, yep, bye.